Hi, I want to welcome all of you do-it-yourself budgeteers to part 3 of my personal budgeting series, How to Build a Budget, Expenses. We are now at part 3 of my 7-part series on personal budgeting. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at budgeting for expenses. Now, compared to income, expense budgeting is a little bit more tedious, takes more time, there's more data, more records to sift through. So let's start here, capturing all of your previous expenses for the prior year. Now, if you've already done that and filled out your expense recording and tracking spreadsheet, woo-ha, you're ahead of the game. If not, it takes some time. You should take some time to gather your records and go through the process of entering all the previous year's actual expenses into the proper categories in the spreadsheet. And of course, make sure that you've gone ahead and aligned all of the categories as you defined them across all the different spreadsheets and across the worksheets within a particular spreadsheet. Next, identify your non-discretionary and your discretionary expense categories. Fourth, prioritize your discretionary expenses. Fifth, set a savings goal. Okay, let's take a look at how this actually plays out. Now, this expense recording and tracking spreadsheets represents the previous year's actual expenses that you incurred. So someone has gone ahead and filled in all of the different expenses based on the records for the previous year, and this is a total of what we have. Now, what we do then, once we've gone through that, or if you have it, is you're going to go ahead and you're going to copy. Note I've changed this column from TBD to insurance, so you should see it across all the different spreadsheets that it's called insurance. Let's just verify that. Yep, there we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of this actual data except for columns N and O, projects and travel, and I'll explain why in a minute. And we're going to go ahead and copy that. So we're going to do a Control C, and then we're going to go to the budget spreadsheet. So here we are at the budget spreadsheet. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it in. Now it's going to be a paste special because I just want the values. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in all the values. And voila, we've now got all of our previous year's history into the current year's projected budget. And that really is not too bad if you already have that spreadsheet completed. Now I've created a worksheet here called Rankings. And in Rankings, I've taken our categories, and I've just highlighted or indicated which are discretionary and which are non-discretionary. And over here, I've ranked the non-discretionary expenses from most important to least important, and I've set a savings goal of 5%, which brings us to step 7, complete the projects and travel worksheets. So here's projects and here's travel, and these are expense categories that from my experience can vary quite a bit from year to year. So I pay a special attention to how I'm going to budget for these two categories. Now, I'm calling them projects in this example because I'm figuring, well, maybe more people can relate to a project instead of what I call it capital spending. And really, I use it as a catch-all to give visibility to non-repeat expenses. By that I mean something that I budget for 1 year and it probably won't be in my budget in the following year. And projects are one example of capital spending, but I might include something like a pair of new running shoes. Here's some examples, and I like to do it on a quarterly basis as opposed to a monthly basis because, again, from my experience, I find that projects and travel sometimes are not, they may shift from month to month, and so by doing it by quarter, I kind of give myself that little bit of wiggle room. So when you look at the totals here, this will show up in March. Q2 will show up in June, September, and December for Q4. Over here in travel, I've gone ahead and entered a few trips, again by quarter. And I like to use these types of expenses to do my budgeting for various trips. And these totals will be again in March, June, September, and December over here on the expense worksheet tab. So here you'll see the quarterly totals for projects and travel from these two worksheets. which now takes us to step 8. And this is where we make adjustments to the expenses that we entered in from the previous year. And types of adjustments that I make are for inflation and for expected change. So let's take a look at how we do that. Okay, so here we are in the budget worksheet under expenses. And let's just take a look at a couple things that could change for the coming budget year. And some examples might be, okay, for my gasoline and auto expense, no changes to the number of cars or the number of miles, but I do think that gasoline is going to be cheaper this year than it was last year. So you might want to go in and reduce each of these by 10%. So one way you can do that is just to multiply by 0.9, and easier said than done, huh? And you can go ahead and do that for each of these subsequent months to reduce this total by 10%. Now that's one example of an adjustment you can make. But food, you stay the same, no changes in household composition and no major changes in the cost of food. Insurance, if you're like me, it goes up every year. So you might say, gosh, it's been going up an average of 5%. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm having to add this equal sign because I pasted in values. And I'm going to increase this by 5%. And this is my car insurance. Okay, and this is my home insurance. And this even goes up even more than 5%. Let's just say this goes up by 9%. So you can see that I've made adjustments for my expected increase in insurance. Taxes, you've already been notified that your taxes are going up by $100 next year, so you go ahead and make these changes. And again, utilities, I usually add an increase in terms of inflation. So I'll say, let's just say that I'm going to adjust these upwards by 3%. And so you do that for all the subsequent months. And you say, oh, my niece graduated from college, no more birthday gifts for her, she's on her own. Take that out. And same thing for all these other expense categories. You know your lifestyle, you know what's coming up and how you want to manage things for the future year. And those are examples of making adjustments for your expenses. Alrighty, so we've made all of our adjustments and we've got a pretty good handle on our trial or first iteration of our budget. And that moves us to step number 9, where we're going to look at the income versus expense worksheet tab and compare the savings goal to the difference between the income and the expenses. We want to make sure that everything copied over correctly and that all the assumptions look reasonable. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So just FYI, I went ahead and increased everything by 3% and decreased the gas by 10%. Our total expenses in this example then are $42,210. So let's click on the income expenses and we see that they did copy over correctly. And from a previous part 3A of the budgeting training session, we have our income total here. So in our example, we have over $4,000 variance to the good, which is equal to 9%. And if you recall, our savings goal was 5%, so hey, that's great. We've gone ahead and exceeded our savings goal. Congratulations. Now to mix things up a little bit, I've added another project here. I'm calling it a kitchen remodel. It's just something that you'd really like to do. And you've gotten a couple of estimates, and it looks like for the work you want, the scope of work, it's going to cost $6,000. So we go back here to the income and expenses and say, oops, we're now running a deficit of almost $2,000. So we got to figure out, what do we do about that? So this is where this comes into play. You say, well, we're being pushed over our income by projects, which is our lowest ranking out of all of our discretionary expenses. Golly, we're going to have a hard time figuring out what do we do to not only not run a deficit, but to achieve our savings goal. So you look back over here and you say, okay, I should probably start with my projects. So you go back to projects and you say, I need to free up some money. So what can I do? Well, I can't really put off these things. I may just say, well, I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to turn that one to 0, and we'll just have a hold off on painting the bathrooms because we prioritize the kitchen project as being more important. So where are we at? Well, we've come down a little bit, but we're still running a deficit. So now what we've got to do is say, well, let's look at our travel plans and see if there's anything in terms of our upcoming travel that maybe we might want to change. So we've got a trip home and we have an extended business conference. That's kind of a splurge. Say, well, I think we're just going to nix that that little splurge and take that out of the equation and see what that does. All right, we're getting closer, but we're still not all the way there. So what do we want to do next? Let's look at our restaurant, that going out, that thing that helps us have some fun and helps keep us a little bit sane. But we probably could do without all the calories. So we've got $1,300 there. Not a lot to play with. We're actually pretty good when it comes to that. But we might just say I'm going to be a little more aggressive, and I'm just going to make a flat $100 per month budget for eating out. Okay, so that takes us down to $1,200, and we're still not all the way there. We're going to say, well, wow, what are we going to do here? Okay, so we might say, well, here's our kitchen remodel project. We may have to reduce the scope of our project. And for example, you might have been intending to put in a double oven. And instead you say, well, I'm just going to go with a single oven instead. And that'll take me down to, say, $4,500. And you come back here and say, where am I at? Okay, well, it's looking better. And you just need to make some other changes to get to your 5% goal. So the point here is not to go through this exercise ad nauseum, which I may have already done, but to just show you that it's an iterative process and you have to make choices and decisions. And this criteria that you've established helps you look at where those pressure points are for you to help you make decisions and choices to try to achieve your goals and have a balanced budget and also save some money. So that's pretty much it. I hope you found it helpful. I know that when you start talking about filling out your budget, it gets pretty complicated, and there's a lot of different pressure points and levers and questions. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to email them to me using the comment form on the website, and I'll be happy to give you my impression or how I do it to help you along. And if you are doing this, my hat's off to you, because I know that do-it-yourself budgeting is a discipline. It takes time, but I really think the rewards outweigh the amount of time that it takes to put together your budget and to keep track of all the expenses. It's a great discipline. It's like eating, the right foods and getting the right exercise. It's just really, I think, a critical success factor. So hats off to you if you're with me so far, and I look forward to having you join me for our next session. See you later.